Kara, you got any news for us today?
Yes, I do. So, New Zealand, a country, one of the few countries known for having stamped out community spread of COVID, announced its first lockdown in 6 months after three new unexplained cases of COVID appeared. The country will go into a 3-day lockdown and then go back to its normal business. A new study from Queen Mary University in London describes how a newly created neural network can use Wi-Fi to read the emotional states of individuals by measuring how and when wireless signals bounce back off their bodies. Asan Noor Khan, first author of the study, said, quote, "We're now looking how to investigate how we could use low-cost existing systems, such as Wi-Fi routers, to detect emotions of a large number of people gathered, for instance, in an office or work environment. This is, of course, incredibly terrifying." Archaeological work near Stonehenge has led to the discovery of an ancient Neolithic grave site near the stone monument, containing a 4,500-year-old baby, some pottery, and a number of other grave goods. This work was done in advance of a controversial tunnel project near Stonehenge to ease traffic congestion on the way to the famous monument. And one more thing, we reported on the Chicago Mothman sightings in 2017 and 2018. Well, these sightings have not really stopped, although they've slowed in 2020, with new sightings in Missouri, Illinois, and Wisconsin as well. They've just stopped making the news. The sightings, along with relevant links, are still available on singularfortean.com. Back to you, Chauncey.
It's interesting how differently New Zealand has dealt with this virus than we have. Now, I understand that they have, to be fair, they do have a very different logistical situation than we have.
They're a tiny island. Yeah.
Two small islands in the middle of nowhere. Only one of them is really where the population is. The smaller of the two islands is the one where the population is. And, don't get me wrong, a lot of people go there for New Zealand, I'm sure, but in the grand scheme of things, not a huge amount of people going in and out. But it is interesting, 3 new cases, and they're going to lock down for 3 days so that they can just go right back to life, So that's
they've had no lockdowns in 6 months, and I mean, like you said, it's a different situation. Anyone who comes into the country quarantined for 2 weeks, it doesn't matter if they're tested, vaccinated, whatever. You quarantine for 2 weeks, and then they have incredibly robust contact tracing. So, if there are 3 cases and they don't know how it happened, they lock down the country. So, yeah, definitely a very different situation because, we can't catch everyone who wants to enter the country.
Right.
We do not have that ability. And obviously, we're screening at airports and stuff, and it could be a lot more rigorous than it is, but there's only so much we can do, and also we didn't really have any kind of testing for the critical periods where it actually would have made any kind of difference.
Right.
So we couldn't go the contact tracing route because we just didn't have our logistics together. But it is worth noting there are countries that are not tiny islands that have also figured this out. The Koreas, Vietnam, a lot of just South Asia pretty much has figured this out. So it's not just places like New Zealand, but they all pretty much took the model of anyone in has to quarantine, and we're testing the entire populace just all the time.
And enforcing it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, a massive difference in enforcement in these countries. Right. And I think, honestly, a lot of the difference is probably not the government response so much as the people take it seriously.
Yeah, well, I recently had an experience with this. I watched the Framing Britney documentary from Hulu with my wife about Britney Spears, and I posted something about it on Facebook, and I realized that this is a confusing world. While I'm sitting here thinking QAnon's a joke, I also think we might need to free Britney. I'm just like, Okay, how can anybody navigate this
I
this
mean,
world that
those
we live
those
in?
are two pretty different things, right? I
They
mean,
are, but I mean, it's just these weird hearsay conspiracies that I'm learning from TV and YouTube, just like everything else. I mean, that's where I'm learning these things,
that's true.
and so I don't know. But yeah, I think our big problem with COVID, and Trump fans out there, I'm sorry, you're not going to like this, was just a major lack of leadership.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
a lot of people don't understand what leadership means. Leadership means delivering. Leadership doesn't mean telling people what to do. It's not a dictator situation. Leadership is leading by example while telling people what to do, and so being respectful. That's why I always feel that I need to at least believe that my president is smarter than I am,
Right.
and any, I need to believe that that's a possibility, like if I have a counselor, I need to believe that my counselor is smarter than I am, at least in the topics that we're dealing with. And, leadership, a lot of people have sort of mocked past politicians for sort of living up and holding these image ideas. But of course, it's obviously important, um,
Yeah.
to lead by example. That's just how it's done. Or that's how it's done effectively. It's either example or fear are really the only two ways. So there's a lot of bosses that lead by fear. And frankly, they have high turnover rates. So
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I don't think a more competent president could have done like what New Zealand did in the United States. I
no,
think
no,
that
no,
would
I
have
don't
been a
either.
massive feat.
I don't either.
But I think what could have been different is, we could have had contact tracing earlier if the federal government had like done any work, because they basically were just like, let the states handle it. And he definitely could have like told his supporters that yes, you do need to wear a mask. And I think that probably would have saved thousands and thousands of lives right there. Like if he
Yeah.
hadn't just made it an issue where half the country thinks the virus isn't real and therefore are spreading the virus.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm going to put a little bit of the blame on the medical community for being too scientific and not PR-y enough. First of all, I
Yeah,
think the
that's
use
fair.
of the word of novel was poorly used. Most people, frankly, I don't think most people know what the word novel means in that context. And so
Mm.
I don't think people really understood. They're just, oh, well, now they're coming out and they don't know anything about it. Yeah, that's what novel means. They don't know anything about it. It just happened. So they're learning about it. But I don't think that was made clear. So people are just all, oh, it's constantly changing. It should have been made clear from the get-go. And every time it was spoken about, this information will change constantly, 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 and sort of beat that into people's heads like we are figuring this out and we're doing our best to mitigate this, but we just don't know. And while they
Yeah.
did say that once or twice here and there, blah, 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 I feel that should have been the spearhead of the messaging.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about this because I guess I don't really blame the scientists for that, because that is not their job, and they spend
I
their
don't blame
entire
anybody. I blame
yeah.
individuals, myself included, for not being as smart as we probably should be. But
Right. Well, who I do blame for that particular problem is like science writers, the media, I think.
mm,
Um I mean, we have a media ecosystem that is built around clickbait, so it's a little not surprising that there was just a flood of articles. Do this to not get COVID. Do this to
right.
not get COVID.
Mm.
This expert says it could be this bad. This expert says it could be this bad. Oh, and by the way, the first person isn't even an expert. He's like a freaking Silicon Valley guy who made a computer model. Like,
Right. And of course, the main messaging does go back to the White House, to bring it
right,
back to,
that's where he could have led.
right, to bring it back to watching TV. My wife and I, we also watched that 4-part documentary on Netflix about the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. And one of the cops was talking in a real interesting way because there was so much misinformation getting out that they finally had to take the spearhead. Instead of just telling people and allowing them to piece together the story, they stopped talking to everybody and every day put together one videotape that had all of their information that they then passed out to all the networks in order to get a seamless message out to the people of Los Angeles. And something like that in these sorts of situations where we're all kind of on board, where we're not, you and I aren't sitting here trying to come up with answers to a pandemic, because I mean, obviously, we're not going to come up
with
We're
idiots. We don't know.
Right. Yeah. In the world of pandemics, we're about as dumb as they come, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, neural network in the office place to see how happy people are so that they can eventually get fired for low morale, so that they can say, well, you know, cost effectively, it would be much better to onboard a whole new office crowd than it would be to try to bring up the morale of the people in our current office. So let's wipe all them out and replace them with the new thing, because that'll save us some bucks. Absolutely terrifying.
Literally talking in the article about this might have like just blithely, the author is like, yeah, this could have applications for human resources, or it could be useful for police to tell the temperament of a crowd. And I'm like,
that makes sense. That one makes sense as far as safety and how to deal with the situation. You know, the police could basically say, okay, these people are really angry. We're going to have to send somebody in ahead of time to start the negotiation and try to talk this down, or view the crowd and say, hey, these people are in a great mood. Let's just kick back and, you know, not make things worse. You know, there's some positivity to see in there, but like any invention, this one has a slippery slope.
Right. And I feel like there could be situations where it was like, well, data showed the crowd was angry, so we had no choice to freaking open fire, which is like, you know, maybe they didn't even do anything. Maybe they're angry because it's a hot button issue or something. Maybe they had no intention of being violent. So,
yeah.
And also, I'm just concerned about, like, this is literally the technology that they have in 1984. Except, where, you know, if you're in view of a view screen, they can tell, like, sort of what you're feeling.
It called? Double thought?
It's thought crime.
Thought crime, but there's also double thought.
There's also double think.
Yeah, double think. That's it, yeah.
Yeah, that's crime, so. Yeah. It's like and who is going to have this power? Corporations and the government, which in many cases are just the same. Right. And it's like, don't love that.
Yeah, I'm going to put a message out there to all the conservatives and all the liberals. You know, I am a liberal guy. Blah blah blah. Take this as you will, but one of the main problems, you know, we can all focus on these conspiracies, we can all look at this stuff, but one of the main problems in this world is statistical data being used as a precedent. You know, so it's like, why do you have to wear a seatbelt? Is that taking away your personal freedom to accidentally kill yourself while driving? Well, the reason why you have to wear a seatbelt and a helmet is statistical data. Lawyers got the data together. It saved money. They used that to pass the law. Now we have the law because it saves your society money. Now, that statistical data precedent is moved around to absolutely everything, and people use it for everything. The number one worst invention for humanity isn't the nuclear bomb. It's probably the database in a computer, because we are using statistical data to define morality. Where when it comes to the Constitution and freedoms and so on and so forth, using statistical data to justify actions is, again, a very, very slippery slope.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a problem with, like, the discipline of statistics. Like,
I don't either, but how it's used is easily spotted.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, see, my problem is not with how it's used. My problem is with who it is used by. I think that's the root problem, is like the people who get to decide what the statistics mean are just morally bankrupt executives with no motive whatsoever in life other than to maximize the number in their bank account.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think if academics ran everything, if unions ran everything, you know, it would be a different story about. I think we would have different problems.
We would. You know, there's always somebody.
We would not have that problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in academics and unions, there's always somebody at the top. And obviously, from what we've learned, there's always a way to manipulate to turn it into a buck. And there's always going to be that jackass. Stonehenge, new grave. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that there's a whole lot to talk about here, but
because it's Stonehenge.
Yeah.
And okay, so Spinal Tap summed this up perfectly in a line to the song Stonehenge, where Nigel says, "No one knows who they were or what they were doing, but their legacy lives on." And I'm just great. Nobody knows who they were or what they were doing, but apparently their legacy lives on. That's really what we're dealing with here. Is we don't know.
Yeah,
but it's cool,
That's
and
right.
it's weird to think, we think of humanity as being so old and starting in Africa, and but there is some really old ass stuff through Europe that's really interesting. I think the oldest cave paintings that we found are actually in France. So I'm always amazed at how old civilization could possibly be.
It is. And I mean, 4,500 years old, that's actually less old than like Mesopotamia. Like, the earliest. So this isn't one of those articles where it's like freaking 10,000-year-old civilization discovered baffles all scientists.
Right.
This is just.
But the cave paintings in France, they are that old.
The cave paintings are so freaking old. It's
and
unbelievable.
It's wild. And then Mothman, there's not much to say there. We're just happy to see that you're still out there, Mothman. Come on back.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't prompted to look into this by anything. I was just like, hey, what was going on with Mothman? Are there still Mothman sightings? And so I looked into it, and yeah, there are. So
he's quarantining.
Still out there? Still kicking? Yeah, I guess Mothman's quarantining
and,
with the rest of us.
People are hard to recognize when they're wearing a mask, so.
the person with the 12-foot wingspan.
Right, totally. All right, You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. We got more for you.